everyone. I'm going to walk through using the elementary ELA resources that are part of the first 5 weeks of lessons. These are the resources for weeks 1 and 2. So just a reminder, as you might have seen in some of our other videos, these resources can be used in different ways. One way is to use just the slide deck, which you have access to, in which case you would be able to make any modifications or edits, or you can use the materials that have been embedded into the Schoology course and then copy them into your course for both yourself and your students to utilize. So I'm going to start off in Schoology here. There's a couple of things that will be helpful to do before getting started with the resources. And that first step is to install a couple of apps in Schoology that will be helpful. So the first app that's going to be important is to make sure that you have the McGraw-Hill app so that both you and your students will have access to the Wonders materials. So that's up here again in that App Center. For me, the McGraw-Hill is showing right here. If for some reason yours is not, you would go into the App Center and click where it says publisher name, and you could type in McGraw-Hill. So mine is already there for me. So I'm just going to show you that when I click on this McGraw-Hill app, it will open up the Connect Ed where I have my access to my Wonders resources. And this is going to become important because the resources that are referenced in these first 2 weeks of lessons are going to be coming from the Start Smart. So in this case, that will be Unit 0 for weeks 1 and 2. And the resources come out of whole group reading. And you can find them in here where it says lesson resources. Like you'll see in a bit, we're going to, for example, look at Kafka's Discovery. That's one of the readings from 3rd grade. So you would want to use this reading when it comes time to access it in the slide. And the reason why this is also helpful is that it comes with the highlighting features as well as pencil for annotation. So make sure to install that app before getting started because you're going to want to access the materials from Wonders. So as that's installing, I'm going to show you one more set of apps that will be helpful, and that is the Amplify Reading app. So if you go back into the same place, the App Center, and this time you type in Amplify, you will notice that there is the Amplify Reading Student Edition as well as the Amplify Reading Teacher Dashboard. So you will click on those and install them into your course, and that will make it easier to access these materials. So now let's take a look in our course at the materials for our first 2 weeks. So I'll click on this first folder here just to show an example, which has 3rd grade content. Just so you know, all of the different grade levels do have the same resources available, the slide decks as well as some assignments as options. So by looking at this example, this will also show you what you have as well. So I'm going to click into the folder. For this little walkthrough, I'm going to show you some items that are in week 2. So I'll click on week 2. And just notice that this has been set up by day of the week so that it's easy for students to navigate with some little images to help. So for right now, I'm just going to click on Wednesday. And when you get into the folder, you'll notice that we have it divided into 2 sections, class time and assignments. And so if we look in here, what you'll notice is this is all of the class time or the presentations, the slide decks, and below that we have the different assignment options. So I'll just start quickly by looking at some of the assignments. So some, for example, like this one, the Amplify Reading Login, is just a set of directions for students reminding them on how to log in by using the Schoology app. You will also have some options for other assignments in this folder, which includes some Google assignments in the upper grades as well as some video assignments. So we'll just take a look at those in assignments. So here, for example, is a video assignment option in which students can talk about the story behind their name. So that's also set up for students including directions on how they could record their video in Schoology. So just wanted to point out those options. Now I'm going to go into the class time folder, and it's going to take a moment to load all of those slide decks. But what you'll notice is all the different content areas have been loaded into Schoology so that students have access to the slide deck so they can go back and look at the content. And in your course as the teacher, you have these same materials, so you can actually present right out of this course material. So to do that, the easiest thing to do is to just click on this little frame here, which will pop that slide deck out into full screen, so that then you're able to click through each of the slides to go over your presentation with students. So just wanted to show that and how that functions in Schoology and how that's available for both you to use as well as for your students to refer back to content at a later time. All right, so now I want to just show how materials have been linked to use during the presentation. So for example, in this opening day here, if you're going to look at a text, it oftentimes will have a link for you to use that you can click on and open a material. So as you see on this slide here, you'll see the Jamboard icon. Jamboard is something that is available through Google. It is part of the Google suite of materials and is in the same place where you access your Google Drive. So if you click here on this link, you will notice it's going to take you out into a new tab. It's going to ask you to make a copy, so I'm going to make a copy right now. And that way, this becomes your own Jamboard that you can utilize with your students. So we'll give it a second to load, and I just want to show you what this Jamboard option looks like. So if I click on the top arrow here to the next frame, you will see that we have the words that you just saw in the lesson, but Jamboard allows you to annotate. So by clicking in this toolbar, you will notice that I have available a pen, a marker, a highlighter, or a brush. So I'm going to stick with a pen for a moment. I can use one of the color options here. And for example, if I was doing syllables, I could show students, I could divide it for them by using my annotation through this tool. You can circle, underline, whatever different annotations you might like. It also has an eraser should you need to erase that. Now, one more thing you can do is you can also share this Jamboard with students so they also have the chance to annotate and to manipulate the different items on the Jamboard. So to do that, you just come up here to this blue box that says Share. And when you click on Share on the bottom, it's going to give you the option to share the link. So I recommend that you change this to Editor if you would like your students to have a chance to also work on the Jamboard. And by making them Editor, then if you copy this link here, you could then post that, for example, in the chat of your Zoom or in the update of your Schoology group, and then students would have a chance to interact with the Jamboard. Now, there are several Jamboards that are included in the first 2 weeks of lessons, so you may want to think about rolling this out in a phasing manner in which you heavily model how Jamboard is used in the beginning, and then perhaps as an option you give students editing access. So just wanted to show you that as an option. Now, for this next part, I'm actually going to show you the slide deck. So if you're using just the slide deck portion, I just want to point out a couple of features. These are also embedded in Schoology, but I'll just show you here. So for example, we have made sure to add things such as linguistic patterns into the slides. So you can see that in this speaking bubble right here. So we want to help students with engaging in conversation. So we provide those frames if needed. We also try to incorporate as much as possible the use of graphic organizers. So you will see, like, for example, we use a bubble map here, we use a circle map, and then often following the graphic organizer, we provide possible student responses. And so when you see the graphic organizers, you can use some Zoom annotation tools. You can simply mark them in conversation and then show students some possible answers. So those are in the slide decks as well. So one more thing that we have added into the slide deck is the Wonders resources that will be utilized during this first Start Smart set of lessons that go with that Unit 0, Weeks 1 and 2. So for example, I showed you earlier Kafka's Discovery, and that's something that you're going to be close reading with students. So on the slide, we do have an image of the resource that you're looking for. And remember, that is coming from the Connect Ed resources, from those Start Smart resources, from the whole group reading. So we recommend that you have that open so that you can access those resources should the link not work for whatever reason. So if you do click here, if you do have Connect Ed open, it hopefully will redirect to that resource. But again, it's best to have the Connect Ed open and ready to go so that if there is any issue with the link, that you are able to pull up the resource. And again, the reason for using it actually in that manner, rather than just the PDF, is if you open the resource straight in the Start Smart lesson resources, again, you do have that ability to annotate, which is a nice feature for demonstration during the lessons. So just wanted to point that out as well. One more thing I'd like to point out as a feature of these lessons is that we try to incorporate some ways in which you can use Zoom for participation. So we included some options. So for example, here, this is a way to teach students how to use the participation icons, and they can click on the yes if they would like to share out an answer. Or you will see, for example, in that closed syllable lesson, that we incorporated the reactions for Zoom, and students can tell you if what they heard is a closed syllable or not by using their reaction button. So you will find that we also try to incorporate some Zoom options for participation. So as you look through the resources, we have tried in these first 7 days to establish some routines that will be necessary, give students some exposure and practice with some foundational skills. We've talked about things like being an active listener and speaker and using some accountable talk frames, as well as introducing them to big buckets, for example, making sure that they can identify the differences between fiction and nonfiction, and also thinking about some routines that will be necessary when they engage in instruction, thinking about how to be an active listener, speaker, reader, and learner. So now that we've had a chance to take a look at the ELA materials, just wanted to remind us of a great place to get some additional resources, which is the Elementary Teacher Plan Book. And it has some additional tutorials on some of the things we talked about on Zoom features, Google Jamboard, and the use of Google Slides. So just wanted to point that out. So for example, if you click on the Zoom tab, it will have some nice tutorials that go along with the ELA lessons. So for example, if you wanted to use annotation with the graphic organizers in ELA, this would be a great tutorial here. If you wanted to use the poll during ELA instruction, here's how to set up a poll, and as well as the meeting controls to use those participation features. We also talked about the option of using Jamboard for the foundational skills. So all the Jamboards were already created for you to use in the lessons, but if you just wanted to familiarize yourself with using Google Jamboard, there are some nice tutorial videos in here on Google Jamboard. And then last is some tutorials on Google Slides. So if you're using the Google Slide decks and you needed any information on using those, these are also some nice job aid video tutorials. So just wanted to remind us that these resources are available, as well as even some great resources on the use of Schoology. So hope that is helpful as we get started with our first 5 weeks. So thank you for taking the time to watch this.